Section 3.4, Adding and Subtracting Mixed Numbers. We are going to continue to use the same skills we have developed thus far in this chapter and apply it to mixed numbers. Remember, a mixed number is just a whole number and a fraction. So if you are given the mixed number 3 1/5 and wanted to add 4 2/5 to that, I have fractions that I need to add together and the whole numbers that I need to add together. So I'm just going to add them separately like that. And since my fractions already have a like denominator of 5, I can just go through and add the fractions the way they are. 1/5 plus 2/5 gives me 3/5, and then I'm going to add my whole numbers, 3 plus 4. 3 plus 4 gives me 7. So the final answer to this is 7 3/5. One thing you do need to keep in mind and remember, let's do another. If I was given 2 3/10 plus 3 5/10, once again, the denominators of the fraction are the same. So I can just add those numerators, 3 plus 5. Keeping the same denominator, I get 8/10 as a fraction. 2 plus 3 gives me 5. But remember, it is important to always be able to simplify any fractions, put any fractions that we have in lowest terms. And I'm taking a look at 8 and 10, and remembering my divisibility rule of 2, I know I can divide both the numerator and denominator by 2. So when I do that, 8 divided by 2 gives me 4, 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. So I know 8/10 in simplified form is 4/5. So the final answer to this problem is the 5, which is the whole number, and the simplified fraction 4/5. Here's another example, but this time the two fractions that I have do not have the same denominator. So I need to go through and get a common denominator for those, and the numbers that I have are 6 and 8. So as I do that, I'm going to figure out, well, what's the least common multiple of 6 and 8? Well, for 6, skip counting, it's 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. And for 8, as I skip count, it's 8, 16, 24, 32. And I see that they do have a common multiple of 24, which is going to become my new denominator for both of these. So I'm going to change both of these fractions first into 24ths. Using the multiplication rule of 1, I know I can multiply 6 times 4 to give me 24, so I have to multiply that top number by 4. So 1/6 is the same thing as 4 24ths. And then I'm going to multiply 8 times 3 to get 24, which means I need to multiply the top number by 3. 3 times 3 gives me 9. Now I have fractions that have the same denominator, 4 24ths and 9 24ths, which I'm going to add together, and I get 13 24ths, and 3 plus 2, my whole numbers, gives me 5. So the final answer to this problem is 5 13 24ths. Here's another example, and at the end of this one, we will have to go through one more step. 6 3/4 plus 2 2/3. I need a common denominator so I can add those fractions together. So I am going to find the least common multiple. So 4, 8, 12, 16 are the multiples of 4. For 3, it's 3, 6, 9, 12. Oh, I say I have a 12, common multiple of 12. So I'm going to change both of these into 12ths. If I change 3/4 into 12ths, I need to multiply 4 times 3 in order to equal 12, which means I need to multiply the top number by 3. 3 times 3 gives me 9. So 3/4 is the same as 9/12. When I change the bottom 2/3 into 12ths, I have to multiply 3 times 4. So I have to multiply the 2 times 4, and I get 8/12. So now I'm going to add together 9/12 plus 8/12. Well, 9/12 plus 8/12 gives me 17/12. And now I'm going to add my whole numbers together, 6 plus 2, and I get 8. But notice that the fraction that I have is an improper fraction. The top number is larger than the bottom number, and I cannot leave it like that. So when I have the fraction 17/12, we talked in an earlier section about changing that. We talked about doing it some different ways. One way you could do it is you could say, well, I know that 12/12 would be equal to 1. So if I took that 12/12 away from the 17/12, I would have 5/12 left over. So I know that 17/12 is the same as 1 5/12. Another way I could do it is 17/12 means 17 divided by 12. So I could do the division algorithm. How many sets of 12 are there in 17? There's 1. 12 times 1 gives me 12. I subtract, I get a remainder of 5. That 5 becomes the numerator because I have 5 out of 12 left over. So that way it's 1 5/12. You can figure out what 17/12 is, changing it to a mixed number, a lot of different ways. Those are two of the ways, but I know that this 17/12 is the same as 1 5/12. So knowing that, I need to add the 8 and the 1 together because the 8 is a whole number and the 1 is a whole number. 8 plus 1 gives me 9, so my final answer to this problem is 9 5/12. Let's talk about subtracting mixed numbers. 5 3/4 minus 2 1/4. Once again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to first of all subtract my fractions. 3/4 minus 1/4 is equal to 2/4. 5 minus 2 gives me 3, so I get an answer of 3 2/4. But once again, that fraction 2/4 can be simplified. I can divide both the 2 and the 4 by 2. So I get an answer of 1/2. 2/4 is exactly the same thing as 1/2, but 1/2 is in lowest terms. So the final answer to this is 3 1/2. Here's another problem, but it may look a little bit different. I have 6 subtract 2 3/8, and notice that the top number 6 is just a whole number 6. So I need to take that 3/8 away from something, but notice I don't have a fraction up here to take it away from, and I have to take that 3/8 away from something. So what I'm going to do is I am going to regroup. I'm going to take 1 away from the 6, and that 1 that I take away, I am going to rewrite as a fraction. Now I could rewrite it as any fraction equal to 1, 2/2, or 3/3, or 4/4. It has to be equal to 1. But I'm going to choose to write it as 8/8. That way the denominators are the same, and I don't have to get common denominators. Please realize 5 8/8 is exactly the same number that I started with, 6, because 8/8 is equal to 1. Now I can do 8/8 minus 3/8, which is 5/8, and I have 5 subtract 2, which gives me 3. Let me do one more similar problem. If I had 14 subtract 1 5/9, I have to take 5/9 away from something, and I don't have a fraction up there to take it away from. So I'm going to take 1 away from the 14, I'm going to make it a 13. That 1 that I took away, I'm going to think of as a fraction, and I'm going to think of it as the fraction 9/9, so that I have a common denominator of 9. Now, 9/9 minus 5/9 gives me 4/9. 13 subtract 1 gives me 12, so my final answer is 12 4/9. 4/9 is in lowest terms. Here's another subtraction problem, and it's a mixed number subtract a mixed number. Since I have my two fractions with different denominators, I have to find a common denominator for both of those. So, skip counting for the 5, the denominator of 5, I have 5, 10, 15, 20. Skip counting for the denominator of 3, I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Oh, they have a common denominator of 15. So I'm going to change both of these to 15ths. If I change 1/5 into 15ths, I need to multiply 5 times 3, which means I need to multiply the top number by 3. So 1/5 is the same thing as 3/15. In order to change 1/3 into 15ths, I need to multiply by 5 over 5, and I get 5/15. So now I want to work on subtracting my fractions. I have 3/15 minus 5/15, but I can't subtract 3 minus 5. So now I need to go through that same regrouping process that we talked about before. I'm going to take 1 away from the 4, I'm going to make it a 3. In that 1 that I take away, you can think about this all sorts of different ways. I can put the 1 over here with the fraction, so now I have 1 and 3/15, which is a mixed number, and I would need to change it into an improper fraction. Remember, in order to change from a mixed number into an improper fraction, I'm going to multiply. 15 times 1 gives me 15, plus the 3 gives me 18. So this is 18/15. 18/15 minus 5/15 is 13/15. And then 3 minus 1 gives me 2. So the final answer is 2 and 13/15. I want to go back just for one moment and talk about another way of thinking this through. And what I'm going to do is I am going to write what we had here. We had 4 and 3/15, subtract 1 and 5/15. And I said, well, you can't take 5 from 3. So we are going to go through, we're going to take 1 away from the 4, we're going to make it a 3. And up here at the top, what I did is I put that 1 as a whole number, so I have 1 and 3/15. The other way you can think about it, though, is that 1 that I'm taking away from the 4, I'm going to think of it as a fraction. I'm going to think of it as 15/15. I know that 15/15 is equal to 1, which is what I took away from that 4 to go from 4 to 3. Here's the 1 right here that I took away. Now 3/15 plus 15/15 gives me 18/15. Notice it's exactly the same as I did it that particular way. And then 18/15 minus 5/15 is, once again, 13/15. 3 minus 1 gives me 2. It doesn't matter how you go through and do it. Some people seem to prefer to do it the first way that I did it. Some people seem to prefer to do it the second way that I did it. Let's do one more example of a problem where we have to do some regrouping. 5 and 4/5 minus 2 and 5/6. The very first thing I need to do is I need to have common denominators. So I am going to figure out by skip counting what is the least common multiple of 5 and 6. For 5, skip counting, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. For 6, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. So the common multiple is going to be 30. I'm going to change both of these into 30ths. If I change 4/5 into 30ths, I'm going to have to multiply 5 times 6. So I have to multiply the top number by 6. 4 times 6 gives me 24. If I multiply the bottom number, 6 times something is going to have to give me 30. That would be 5. I have to multiply the 5 times 5, and I get 25/30ths. I can't take 25/30ths away from 24/30ths. So I need to come and take 1 away from the 5 and make it a 4. And that 1 that I take away, I'm going to add to the 24/30ths. I'm going to this time say that 1 is the same as 30/30ths. and then add together 30 plus 24. 30 plus 24 gives me 54 thirtieths. Now remember, the other thing I could have done if I'd wanted to is I could have put a 1 in 24 thirtieths and then changed that into an improper fraction, but once again I'd be getting that 54 thirtieths. Now I have 54 thirtieths minus 25 thirtieths. 54 minus 25 gives me 29, so I have 29 thirtieths, and 4 subtract 2 gives me 2. So my final answer is 2 and 29 thirtieths. I know there's a lot of information in this section. You will need to do a lot of practice in order to perfect your skills, but as always, please let me know how I can help.